Hey guys, today we'll be ranking all 4 of Diablo expansions. My name is Fallen Messiah. I've been a Diablo fanatic since 1998 when I first played Diablo 1 on my old PlayStation 1. I fell in love with the game immediately and it's been my favorite franchise ever since. I spent thousands of hours playing both Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 and now I'm currently playing Diablo 4, making build guides, item deep dives, and more. At the moment, Diablo franchise consists of 4 full games, and each of them having exactly 1 expansion. Well, so far anyway. Isn't that neat? And since a new Diablo 4 expansion is all but certainly going to be announced before the year ends, I figured now would be a perfect opportunity to rate and rank all these expansions, or DLCs as they're often called, in Diablo universe. To that end, I will have 3 main criteria. Number 1, impact. How impactful this expansion was to its base game. How transformative. How much did it move the needle and whether or not it made the base game better. Number 2, legacy. For the second criteria, we're looking at how influential this expansion was both to the franchise itself and the gaming in general. The mark that it leaves behind. And number 3, personal opinion. This is basically just my own view, experience, and personal impression that this game has left on me. Now, one important note, we are not pitting these games against each other. Just because one game's DLC is ranked higher than the others, this does not mean that I think the game A is better than the game B. Contrary to some opinions, I think every Diablo game is amazing in its own right. Each Diablo game is very different and unique with its own strengths and flaws. Which Diablo game is best is a very contentious topic, and might be for a future video one day, but not this one. Also, if you like these kind of videos, then drop a like and sub to the channel for more Diablo content. It really helps me out a ton. Anyway, let's jump straight in. Number 4, Hellfire, Diablo 1. Let's start with a show of hands. How many of you actually even knew that Diablo 1 had an expansion? Be honest. Hellfire, also called Diablo Hellfire, is an expansion pack for Diablo 1, developed by Synergistic Software and published in 1997. Hellfire had a pretty rough start, as its development went directly against the wishes of Blizzard, whose parent company at the time went above them to greenlight the production. Blizzard North was already large at work developing Diablo 2, so they had to impose lots of restrictions on Hellfire's development and scope. As a result, Hellfire integrates into Diablo as purely optional additional content. Something that you can engage with if you're hungry for more Diablo, but can also entirely ignore. Hellfire's storyline occurs as an aside to the main story arc of the original game. A sorcerer, while performing a ritual, unknowingly releases the demon Nakrol onto the town of Tristram, but before it can completely escape, the sorcerer magically seals the doors. The player is later tasked with venturing into Nakrol's lair and vanquishing it. Hellfire is a single-player expansion to Diablo. It is not playable on Battle.net, and its changes do not transfer to online characters. It adds a total of 8 new dungeon levels, with a final boss at the very end. Dungeons are all completely new, with 2 new tilesets. First 4 dungeons, called the Hive, and last 4 called the Crypt. Difficulty-wise, the Hive is similar to the caves from the base game, and the Crypt is similar to Hell levels. New caves are also populated with completely new monsters with some very interesting mechanics. I gotta say, I really enjoyed the new dungeons when I first played them. It still felt like Diablo 1, but different. The second you jump into the Hive, you can see what I mean. It's very much Diablo 1, but with a dash of something alien. The Crypt is also really cool, both visually, but also the way it feels. Atmosphere is very foreboding, complete with a new soundtrack that feels fresh, yet just right for Diablo 1. Nothing feels out of place, which is something that I really appreciate. Speaking of new monsters, they're actually quite the challenge. From personal experience, I find the Crypt levels to be harder than the Hell levels of the base game. For example, on Hell difficulty, some of the monsters in the Crypt are triple immune, which makes them really hard to deal with. Thankfully, we gain an access to a very powerful spell called Apocalypse. In the original game, this spell was only available to staves and scrolls, but in Hellfire, we can obtain the spellbook after killing Nakrol. Even though its animation appears to blast fire, it has a special type of unresistible damage. Therefore, it is the only spell in the game capable of damaging enemies that are triple immune, or immune to fire, lightning, and magic damage. Other than new zones, monsters, and soundtrack, there's actually a new class in Hellfire 2, the Monk. An unarmed combatant also proficient with stakes. There's not a lot to be said about Monk, to be honest. I didn't find him too exciting, and it's certainly not exciting enough reason to get Hellfire on its own. Besides, classes in Diablo 1 work very differently from the rest of the franchise. There are no class-specific skills and spells for the most part, and stats are the only real difference between the classes. There's also two hidden characters, Barbarian and Bard. These don't have unique character models, however, so Barbarian is just an oversized warrior, for example, which makes for a funny sight. Overall, Hellfire was a half-decent effort given that it was limited from the start in its scope and what it was allowed to do. I really did enjoy the new zones, monsters, and soundtrack. The problem is that Hellfire never made any real effort to improve on Diablo 1. Sure, some additional spells and item affixes were there. There was an option to move faster in town, but that was it. No stash, no UI improvements, spell hotkeys. They gave us an amulet that doubles the amount of gold we could carry, but that just meant our inventory gold stacks were 10k each instead of 5. Future fan-made mods allowed all the gold to be in a single stack, but an official expansion couldn't do the same? That's a bit shameful. So the final verdict, Hellfire was neither impactful for Diablo 1, nor did it leave any legacy behind. Even hardcore Diablo enthusiasts often don't even know that it exists out there. And frankly, while I did play Diablo 1 all the way back in the 90s, I myself only visited Hellfire several years ago. While it did have some potential, Hellfire will ultimately remain a forgotten footnote in Diablo history. 4.5 out of 10. Number 3. Vessel of Hatred, Diablo 4. Vessel of Hatred is the first and so far the only expansion pack for Diablo 4. It was released on October 7th, 2024. The expansion, well, expands on the base game open world by introducing the jungle region of Nahantu. Along with Nahantu, we're also given a new class, Spiritborn, an agile jungle warrior. Vessel of Hatred comes with a full questline and a continuation of the story of the original game. Let's start with the positives. I really like the jungle vibe in video games, so when it was first announced that Nahantu would be the new zone, I was really excited. Nahantu looks gorgeous. It's a really massive area with gorgeous landscape and thick foliage. It's also very diverse as well. Other than your typical rainforest, there's also forgotten temples, clay bogs in the Field of Giants, and red mesa cliffs of the Ganze Plateau, making for a very striking, handcrafted open world. Spiritborn as a class is also really fun. At a time when literally everyone was expecting and hoping for a paladin, introducing a new class to not just the game, but the entire franchise was a bold choice. It could have been a lot easier to simply bring back an existing class, but they went for something different, and I respect that. Spiritborn was something new that hasn't been in Diablo before. They're fast, agile jungle warriors that harness the powers of spirits to smite down foes. If Witch Doctor and a monk from Diablo 3 had a baby, it would probably be a Spiritborn. Class-wise, Spiritborn is probably the most well-rounded of them all. The way the class is designed in terms of skills and the class mechanic called Spirit Hall and how well they work together, you could tell the devs had a lot more time to spend on class design with Spiritborn as opposed to other classes in the game. Vessel of Hatred launched concurrently with Season 6 of Diablo 4, and with it came some important changes to the game, such as revamping the game's difficulty, introducing Torment tiers, redesigning Paragon to make it account-wide, and lowering max level from 100 to 60, which all helped to streamline the gameplay further. While the base game had a pretty strong main story and a campaign that was overall quite well received, Vessel of Hatred, well, I'm just gonna say it, the campaign sucked. I did not like it. I could make an entire video about just that, but I'll focus on some key points to keep things concise. In a world of Sanctuary, to say that life is hard would be quite an understatement. It seems that every other week there's a demon infestation of some sort or a world-ending apocalypse. The story feels like a natural continuation of where we left off, but the main problem, in my opinion, is our heroine, Neyrelle. We meet Neyrelle in the base game, a gifted teenager that has already been through a terrible loss, more than people her age should ever experience. In the game, she does act appropriately for her age, oftentimes bratty, rash, and rushing head-on to things without thinking through it. I'm sure that it's supposed to show her mischievous and rebellious side, and the story really tries to make us root for her. Here's the thing though, I don't like Neyrelle at all. even if she does behave as one her age would, in a world of mighty heroes, powerful warriors, larger-than-life characters, including our own, who go through hell and back, literally, to face the most dangerous odds, Neyrelle sticks out like a sore thumb. And I didn't like her in the base game either, but at least there she was tempered by other cast of some pretty amazing characters. Donan, Lilith, Elias are all amazing, great personalities and beautifully voice acted. And the best character of the game easily being Lorath, with some absolutely impressive voice work by Ralph Ineson. All of that sorely missing from Vessel Hatred, however, other cast of characters being dead of course, but the absence of Lorath is very noticeable, yet never explained. Instead, Neyrelle now becomes the sole protagonist, while our character plays Where's Waldo with her for the most of the story's run. And if they really went for a vulnerable yet strong female protagonist, they had a perfect blueprint in Leah from Diablo 3. Leah was actually a likable character, strong and vulnerable at the same time, but Neyrelle only comes across as insufferable. We also get some secondary supporting characters in Vessel Hatred, but they're forgettable enough that I didn't even bother to look them up for this video, to be honest. The only Vessel Hatred character I really liked was Urivar, the secondary antagonist of the story. I really liked him, but I felt that he perished far too easily and could have been utilized a lot better. And, to top things off, in the base game, we slay Lilith, daughter of Mephisto and the mother of Sanctuary. In Vessel Hatred, the final boss is Mephisto's dog? Really? Not exactly the highest of stakes there. And yes, I know they're setting up the story to last for several more expansion packs, but was this really the best they could do? And not to say that there weren't any cool moments in the story. Akarat was cool. That one scene where the entire sea departs and reveals a secret passageway was also cool as fuck, not gonna lie. And revisiting locations like Travincal was a great nod to Diablo 2. But unfortunately, it doesn't help with the final impression. Gameplay-wise, Vessel Hatred added runes to the gameplay, which I feel work rather well for Diablo 4. It also added Undercity and the Dark Citadel. Overall, I think Vessel Hatred is not bad. We get a new zone, new class, and some extra stuff. But as a first expansion to the new flagship Diablo game, that just doesn't feel good enough, and it's my opinion a surprisingly mediocre effort to an otherwise great game. It doesn't feel that impactful to Diablo 4, nor is it influential. Hopefully, next expansion is a lot better. 6 out of 10. Number 2. Reaper of Souls, Diablo 3. Reaper of Souls is an expansion pack for Diablo 3 released on March 25th, 2014. Diablo 3 didn't exactly have the smoothest of rides during its early days, and it took a lot of work from Blizzard for the game to find its identity and turn into the classic ARPG it is now. Let's go back in time a little bit. It's sometimes easy to forget that it took 12 years for Diablo fans to get their hands on the next Diablo game after Diablo 2 released. And Diablo 3, as a result, had both massive expectations from the fans and huge shoes to fill. Upon release, the reception was mixed. Some people praised it, but a lot of fans didn't like the more arcadey look and feel of Diablo 3 compared to its gothic and gritty predecessor. Personally, I always loved the way Diablo 3 looked. Sure, it was more colorful and flashy than other Diablo games, but it definitely had its own distinct style that complemented the game well. Not only that, but I think it also aged rather well. Other than important differences in itemization and skills, the early release of Diablo 3 was surprisingly similar to Diablo 2 in some ways. There were 4 difficulty settings: Normal, Nightmare, Hell, and Inferno, and Diablo served as the final boss. Diablo 3 also had an in-game auction house that, in theory, serves to facilitate trade between players quickly and easily. However, by the time Reaper of Souls released, the game felt very stale and stagnant. There were lots of complaints that the game was dropping too many legendary items, yet most of them were useless, and people were spending more time using the auction house than actually playing the game. 1 month before Reaper of Souls was released, devs released a pre-expansion patch, often called Loot 2.0, that completely changed the game. Auction house was removed, items were more streamlined, and they also made items in the game account-bound. To compensate, they introduced a so-called smart loot system that now drops legendaries for your class only, as opposed to getting a random drop. He also changed the difficulty scaling and introduced Tormenteers. Sounds familiar? Now let's talk about Reaper of Souls itself. I love Reaper of Souls. It introduces one of the coolest villains in the entire franchise, Meltiel. The fallen angel is just so fucking cool as a concept, and visually, he looks stunning. Not only that, but his Reapers are also really cool enemies that add so much flavor to the game. Reaper of Souls introduced a new act, West March. Size-wise, it's the biggest act in the game, jam-packed with content and things to do. Everything from crowded medieval streets to sewers, bogs, and ancient battlefields, Act 5 has it all. Story-wise, Meltiel goes mad after the destruction of the World Stone. Then, after stealing the Black Soulstone from Tyrael, he decides that he wants to purge all humans from Sanctuary, as they are all part demons thanks to Lilith. It is up to us to stop him. Diablo 3 has often been criticized for being less dark than its predecessors. However, Reaper of Souls adds a lot of that gothic horror grit to the game. The color palette in general was a lot darker, as was the mood and feel of the game. Meltiel's Reapers do a great job at sowing dread and despair on Sanctuary's denizens, and the world always feels like it's on the verge of collapse. Main storyline is filled with awesome moments. My personal favorite is fighting on the battering ram that aims to break into the Pandemonium Fortress. The final fight with Meltiel is also really cool and memorable, coupled with an awesome soundtrack as well. Reaper of Souls also adds a new class, the Crusader, a Westmarch native. Crusaders are a Zakarum sect similar to Paladins, and in-game Crusaders did serve as sort of a Paladin light, having lots of similarities with the iconic Diablo 2 class. While I do like the Crusader, the game already had a Holy Warrior in Monk, and I always felt that two flavors of that archetype were one too many. Still, I enjoyed revisiting some of the iconic skills like Blessed Hammer and Fist of the Heavens, and Crusader felt thematically very appropriate to the feel of Reaper of Souls. Other than the new act and class, Reaper of Souls also brought tons of crucial changes to the game that made Diablo 3 what it is today. The most important of all was the new Adventure Mode. Adventure Mode allowed players to fully explore Diablo 3's map freely without being restricted by the story. To that end, new objectives were introduced to the Adventure Mode, bounties and Nephilim Rifts. Bounties are random missions that may require players to kill a special monster, clear an area, or do a side quest. There are up to 5 random bounties in each act, and doing all the bounties in an act provides a reward cache. Nephilim Rifts are a repeatable dungeons that have randomized tile sets and monsters from all areas of the game. Rifts have a bar that fills up on monster kills, and once the bar is full, a boss spawns that grants extra rewards on death. Later patches introduced Greater Rifts, a special kind of Nephilim Rifts in which monsters don't drop any loot on death, but instead, all loot is earned after killing the boss. Greater Rifts were the ultimate challenge in the game, as their difficulty scaled much higher than the one in the base game. If that once again sounds familiar, then you probably picked up that this type of dungeon heavily inspired the Pit from Diablo 4. These changes, along with the adventure mode, completely transformed Diablo 3 and, in my opinion, saved the game. Rifts were an amazing addition with tons of replayability, and together with bounties added a lot of things to do in the game, as opposed to just hunting for items by farming the same zones over and over again. Reaper of Souls was an amazing expansion pack that served as a turning point to not just Diablo 3, but Diablo franchise as a whole, which at that point was seen as stagnant with an unclear future ahead of it. Of course, for people who hated Diablo 3 since day one because it wasn't Diablo 2, Reaper of Souls was never going to change their minds. But for everyone else, it transformed the game completely from the ground up and created a blueprint on how to successfully do so. Reaper of Souls was also highly influential outside of Diablo 3, with many of its core features present in not just Diablo 4, but other ARPG games as well. If it wasn't clear already, I love Reaper of Souls for all the reasons mentioned above, and it's one of the best Diablo titles out there. 8 out of 10. Number 1. Lord of Destruction, Diablo 2. Did you really think it was going to be anything else? Lord of Destruction is an expansion pack for Diablo 2, released on June 29, 2001. Unlike Hellfire, it was a first-party expansion developed by Blizzard North. Lord of Destruction added content in the form of 2 new character classes, new items, and also adding a 5th act in the game. The expansion also dramatically revamped the gameplay of the existing Diablo 2 for solo and multiplayer. It was always a plan for Blizzard North to release at least one full expansion pack for Diablo 2. Development started during the summer of 2000 and lasted for about 1 year. The story continues where Diablo 2 ended. 2 of the 3 prime evils, Mephisto and Diablo, have been defeated and their soulstones have been destroyed, preventing their return. However, the narrator Marius was tricked into surrendering the last soulstone to a false Archangel Tyrael, which was revealed to be Baal, the last remaining prime evil. Act 5 is located in the Northlands that belong to proud barbarian clans. However, they quickly succumbed to Baal's destructive influence, leaving only a single settlement remaining, the town of Harrogate. Our mission is to prevent Baal from corrupting the Worldstone, a powerful artifact nestled at the heart of Ariat Summit. Act 5 is the longest in the game, adding tons of additional content. After marshes, deserts, and jungles of the base game, we're now greeted by tundras, eternally covered in snow, cold glacial caves, and the Worldstone Keep itself. Within these new areas are also new monsters and challenges to overcome, culminating in the final boss battle with Baal himself. Baal is such an iconic villain, and while the fight itself is not that impactful, 5 waves of monsters before the final fight serve as a great interlude and also give lots of experience. Iconic Baal runs on multiplayer would mostly consist of clearing these waves without even fighting Baal himself. 2 new classes introduced in LOD are Druid and Assassin, both adding lots of flavor to Diablo 2 and the way it is played. Assassin is a martial artist also capable of summoning traps to her defenses, while Druid, a close cousin of barbarians, is a master of nature magic, especially fire and cold, while also calling mighty beasts for aid. While Lore of Destruction doesn't stop there, it introduces such a wealth of additional improvements that essentially completely reinvent the game. New item types introduced, for example, are ethereal items that have better defensive and offensive stats, but cannot be repaired. Ideal for mercenaries and specific rune words. Jewels are additional socketables that can have powerful properties and roll random stats similar to items. Charms are items that provide permanent benefits to characters as long as they remain in the inventory. And of course, the biggest addition of them all, runes and rune words. Runes, introduced in LOD, are stones that give powerful attributes when socketed into an appropriate item. They vary greatly in both rarity and usefulness, which made them an ideal currency in multiplayer. For example, Zod, the rarest rune in the game, is also the second rarest item that you can find, and makes any item you put it into indestructible, even ethereal ones, making it very useful in some cases. But while the runes are useful for gaining extra properties on your items, it's the rune words themselves that are the real star of the show, and what really, in my opinion, elevates Lord of Destruction from all the other expansions. So, what are rune words? Rune words are, to put simply, a system that allows players to create their own super powerful unique items. They are a combination of specific runes that are inserted into a socketed item in a specific order. By putting these runes in a very specific order, we then create a rune word, an item that inherits all of the stats of these runes, but also gains many additional powerful bonuses. For example, low runes Tal, Thul, Ort, and Am are pretty common and unremarkable on their own, but if put in a sword base exactly in that order, they create a rune word called Spirit, a powerful item that gives +2 to all skills, up to 35% faster cast rate, and over 100 mana. These bonuses are so good that Spirit often ends up being a best-in-slot item even for high-end builds. What makes the rune word system so amazing in particular is that it provides value to the lowest tier of items, the so-called trash or white items. These are the items that are usually outclassed after the first 10 minutes of the game, but because of the way Diablo 2's itemization works, some of these white items can serve as great bases for powerful rune words. Dropping, for example, a great armor that rolled as superior with 15% increased enhanced defense means that your rune word also inherits the same bonus. As a result, some of these so-called trash items are worth a fortune. The only downside, however, is that rune words often end up being the best in slot items for almost every build, as a result, drastically reducing the value of most unique and set items in the game, even ones that are really rare to find. But that's ultimately the beauty of both Diablo 2 and its quintessential expansion, the sheer depth of its itemization. Every single item and rarity type has its place in the game and can be used in various cases, and the runeword system serves as a natural progression of these principles. Needless to say, Lord of Destruction was a huge success and released to an almost universal acclaim. Diablo 2 was an already awesome game, but LOD turned it into a gaming icon it still is to this day, while cementing its place as one of the best expansion packs not just in Diablo franchise, but in gaming as a whole. So when talking about impact and legacy, it's hard to get much more impactful and more influential than Lord of Destruction. LOD helped to give birth to an entire RPG genre and influenced countless titles in the process. Whether it's future Diablo games, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, LOD inspired them all in one way or another and showed the world how to make a genre-defining action RPG that set the gold standard for everything that followed. 9.2 out of 10. And there you have it, guys, all 4 expansions in Diablo franchise ranked and rated. But what do you think? What is the best Diablo expansion that you played? Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're at it, do you think we're getting an expansion announcement in December for Diablo 4? If you made it to the end, thank you. I'm always grateful that people enjoy me rambling about Diablo. I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed, as it's a free way to help me make more of these. And also, I have a favor to ask. I just finished upgrading this old-ass PC so that I can finally start streaming in December. I'll have a separate announcement for that as well, but I'd appreciate it if you gave my Twitch channel a follow. It's free, and you'll be notified when I start with the regular streams. You can expect everything from Diablo 4 seasonal playthroughs to classics like Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, and more. You can also find my channel in the description of the video, as well as in the pinned comment down below. Anyway, thank you for watching, I'm Fallen Messiah, and I'll see you in the next one.